All right. Sorry, it took me quite some time to come live today because of the faulty internet connection. So we shall begin from Act 3, Scene 1. Now, since this is the ninth lecture on Macbeth, I believe that before going into the entire scope of the third act of the play, which is one of the most pivotal acts of the play, I believe that it is time that we, excuse me, ask ourselves a few vital questions, a few foundational questions, because these are the questions which have disturbed the critics for a very, very long time. Now, one of those major questions has been that though Banco suspects Macbeth, yet he does not try to expose him. Why does this happen? Because if you look at Act 2, Scene 2, Act 2, Scene 3, lines 126 to 129, you find out that Banco is saying, "Thence against the undivulged pretense I fight of treasonous malice." Then why does Banco not expose Macbeth when he is suspecting Macbeth so much? Now, this is one of the major questions that we must ask before we even probe into the third act, because the third act would be the be all and end all for Banco. Sorry for the spoiler alert. Uh, I have a few answers. Now, I am giving you all of them. Actually, I have three answers, three probable answers. I am giving you all the three. You decide which one you want to side with. Okay. Number one, he has been touched by evil. That is, Banco also has been touched by evil, and he succumbs to it. Now, this is not me saying, this is A.C. Bradley saying. A.C. Bradley suggests that Banco has succumbed to evil and basically he's touched by it, and therefore he does not expose Macbeth. The second opinion is that as a Thane, Banco had nothing to do against the king on the basis of suspicion. Once again, I am not saying this. This is Grierson saying. Since Macbeth is the king right now, Banco cannot simply act on the basis of suspicion. Alright. And third is that unlike Macduff, Banco's loyalty was to the King of Scotland and not Duncan himself. So Banco was not specifically loyal to Duncan or to Macbeth. His loyalty was to the throne of Scotland and whoever sits on the throne. So his conventional yet genuine loyalty prevents him from doing anything. Once again, this is not me saying, this is HMV Percival saying. So I have given you three opinions. One by A.C. Bradley, one by H.J.C. Grierson, and one by HMV Percival. So Bradley says that Banco is touched by evil. Grierson says that Banco cannot act on his own and he cannot simply attack the king, he cannot simply accuse the king, the present king, on the basis of a simple suspicion. And thirdly, Percival says that Banco's loyalty lies to the throne of Scotland and whoever is sitting on it. It's not specifically to one person, so it's not either to Duncan, nor is it to Macbeth. All right. Now, with this discussion, you can take any one or you can take all three. I, in any case, these have been interpretations. Okay. So let's begin with Act 3, Scene 1. Forest, a room in the palace. Enter Banquo. Thou hast it now, king, Cawdor, Glums, all, as the weird women promised, and I fear thou playedst most foully for it. So Banquo's utter suspicion is now pointed towards Macbeth, as we have already guessed. Yet it was said it should not stand in thy posterity. Now Banquo is weighing the scales and he is trying to realize that if the weird sister's prophecy was true to Macbeth, it shall also come true for Banquo as well. And therefore he says, yet it was said it should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings. So look, we cannot disagree with any of the three right now. That is, it might very well be possible that he is touched by evil and he succumbs to it. If there come truth from them, as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine, why by the verities on thee made good, may they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope? So Banquo is not utterly untouched by them as he was claiming in the second act. And at weak moments, his desire also surfaces. And then he says, but hush no more. So here, you see, we see Shakespeare's greatness. No matter what he writes about, the world of thesis or of antithesis, the witches are felt as a recurring presence in every act, either by description in the case of antithesis or through anticipation in the case of the world of thesis. But the witches are a predominant presence. Their ominous, their lugubrious existence can be seen as a pall cast over the entire play. So, Senate sounded, enter Macbeth as king, Lady Macbeth, Queen, Lennox, Ross, Lords, attendants. And Macbeth says, here's our chief guest. If he had been forgotten, it had been as a gap in our great feast, and all thing unbecoming. So here we see that there is a great sense of irony, because in this case we realize that Macbeth is already hinting at murdering Banquo. And he is having a great feast because he has become king right now. And he suggests that if Banquo had been forgotten, we know that Banquo would not be forgotten and he would be undone. He would be unbecoming very soon. That is, if our existence can be seen as being or becoming with our desire, then our non-existence, that is our death, would be a form of unbecoming as well. So Macbeth is now speaking in double senses. He is now speaking in dual sense. Tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I request your presence. Let your highness command upon me, to the which my duties are with a most indissoluble tie, forever knit. And look now, Banquo is speaking in a language which is proper for a thane to speak to a king too. So Banquo is no longer that friend of Macbeth which he once was. Now he has a very formal relationship with the King Macbeth. As a thane, he has a relationship with the king, and no longer are two friends talking. But then the tone changes, and the tone changes in a very deep sense of irony, because Macbeth now tries to play the role, and I repeat that he tries to play the role. Let me emphasize on the word play because he is donning up the role of a friend, and in simple discussion, he's trying to find out what are Banco's whereabouts for the afternoon because he has to plan Banco's murder accordingly so that it seems like an accident. Macbeth says, "Write you this afternoon. I, my good lord, we should have else desired your good advice, which still hath been both grave and prosperous in this day's council, but we will take tomorrow. Is it far you write?" So see how competently Macbeth makes his questions that Banquo does not suspect him at all. And here we see that the Hellhound, as later he will be called by Macduff, the Hellhound is potent and potent with his perversion. And then he says, "Is it far you ride? As far, my lord, as will fill the time twixt this, that is the present, and supper. Go not my horse the better, I must become a borrower of the night for a dark hour or twain. So I might be a bit late, that is when night falls. After 1 or 2 hours, I'll come back." And Macbeth says, "Fail not our feast." And Banquo says, "My lord, I will not." Ironically, he will keep his word as a ghost, as a psychological extension, an external manifestation of Macbeth's pent up anxiety. We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing this cruel parricide, filling the hearers with strange invention. But of that tomorrow, when therewithal we shall have the cause of state craving us jointly. So he says that Malcolm and Donalbain have gone to England and Ireland respectively, and they are spreading out lies. But that is a matter of the state, and we are now friends. So Macbeth is very cautious to try to separate his personal and his political paradigms. But Banquo does not realize that for Macbeth, the personal is the political, and the political is the personal. "Hie you to your horse, adieu, till you return at night. Goes Fleance with you." Yet once again, look, Macbeth is very shrewd. And Banquo says, "Aye, my good lord, our time does call upon us." Truly, their time does call upon them. Because Banquo shall die, and Fleance shall escape and fulfill the prophecy of the witches. "I wish your horses swift and sure of foot, and so I do command you to their backs. Farewell. Let every man be master of his time till 7 at night, to make the society the sweeter welcome. We will keep ourselves till supper time alone. While then, God be with you." So now Macbeth says that everybody feel free to do whatever you wish. For myself, I wish to be alone till supper. And exeunt all except Macbeth and the servant. So everybody exits apart from Macbeth and the servant. And he says, "Sirrah, a word with you. Attend those men our pleasure." So Sirrah is a kind of an a word like, say, boy, is are those people waiting for us? And now Macbeth speaks in the royal plural. So whenever he says us, our, don't think that he is speaking about many people, but about one person only. "They are, my lord, without the palace gate. Bring them before us." And the servant exits. And now Macbeth is going into, excuse me, a soliloquy. Now, as I have already explained, there is a difference between a soliloquy and an aside. A soliloquy happens when there is nobody else on stage and the character is alone, and a soliloquy kind of gives a peep into the character's psychological makeup. What is going on in his mind, that is explored, exposed, and exhausted in a way. The audience gets a whiff of what is going to happen. On the other hand, an aside is when there are multiple characters on stage, but according to the stage ploy, they cannot hear what the speaker is saying, and the speaker directly talks to the audience. So, this is an instance of soliloquy because there is no one else on the stage. To be thus is nothing. By thus, he means to be king, to be instated into the position of the king. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. So Macbeth realizes that his kingship can at any point be challenged by Banquo. And then he says, but to be safely thus. So if Banquo is out of the way, his kingship is safe because nobody else knows about the witches, and Lady Macbeth would not expose him. So Banquo is the only person who can cause some danger for him. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. He is much he dares, and to the dauntless temper of his mind, he hath the wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. So look, Macbeth gives us a fourth answer, that is, Banquo always wants to play safe. Banquo does not. Banquo is a very, very diplomatic character, and he always wants to play it safe. So he does not bet on something where he knows that he can be in danger. And therefore, Banquo is a very difficult character to deal with. And therefore, Macbeth says that there is a wisdom which, along with his royal nature, aids him to act safely in valor. So, whereas Macbeth gambles with his own destiny, Banquo never does so. There is none but he whose being I do fear, and under him my genius is rebuked. As it is said, Mark Antony's was by Caesar. So here Shakespeare is referring to one of his own plays, Julius Caesar. Caesar was a great ruler, but when it comes to Mark Antony, Caesar's wit, Caesar's wisdom falls short. Because it was Mark Antony who gave that brilliant speech, yet Brutus is an honorable man. Now, some of you perhaps had Julius Caesar in your school days, so you people know. And those of you who do not know, you can read up Julius Caesar any day. It's a very beautiful play. Now, Macbeth realizes that if Banquo opens his mouth, it means the death for him. Because his people will turn against him. And therefore, he says that my genius is rebuked when it comes to Banquo, because Banquo is a greater plotter when it comes to Macbeth and Banquo. He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me and bade them speak to him. Then prophet-like, they hailed him father to a line of kings. Now look, Macbeth is uncomfortable about the way in which Banquo dealt with the sisters. Whereas Macbeth was almost surprised by hearing what they had to say. Whereas Macbeth was almost begging them to say more, Banquo did not care about them. He did not give a damn about them, and he literally just kind of scolded them that neither do I fear you nor do I care for your prophecies, but when you say so many things about my friend, why don't you speak about me as well? Let's see how powerful you are. And when he challenged them thus, when he kind of scolded them thus, they said that Banquo would be the father of a line of kings. Now here you say Shakespeare is going into something very interesting. It is a kind of buttering up, okay. You must understand that back in the Elizabethan age, the playwrights, the poets, since publication was not that easy, despite the publication houses, the printing presses, publication was not that easy, and you needed a royal patron or a lord or baron who basically would pay for your publication. So when King James was going to pay for this play and its staging and all, you must realize that Shakespeare must butter up King James. That's a common ploy. If you know Bengali and you know about the medieval Mangal Kavyas, there you have heard about the poem called Annada Mangal, written by Bharatchandra Rai Gunakar. There, Bharatchandra also does the same thing. That is when the goddess Annapurna is crossing on the ferry of Ishwari Patni, and then goddess Annapurna tells Ishwari Patni, ভবানন্দ মজুমদার নিবাসে রহিব যতন করি বর্মাগো যাহা চাহ দিব. So I'll go and live at the house of Bhavananda Mujumdar, and you ask me for any boon and I shall grant it to you. Now, Bhavananda Mujumdar was actually one of the ancestors of the king to whom Bharatchandra was reading the poem, and the king became very happy. Such eulogizing was very, very common in all royal courts in the east, in the west, everywhere. And Fleance was considered to be the mythical father of the Stuart dynasty. And King James was a part of the Stuart dynasty. So when Shakespeare kind of prophesied through the voices of the witches that Fleance shall be the king of all the first king of the Stuart line. And in Act 4, Scene 1, he kind of shows in a mirror to Macbeth a long line of kings ending in James the First. So you understand that James would be happy. That's the natural thing. The king wants eulogy and Shakespeare is providing it to him. So that's the most natural thing to happen. So this is a very common trick which Shakespeare is using over here. So he's going by the book almost. So prophet like they hailed him, father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown. Now this is an instance of transferred epithet. An epithet means an adjective, a quality. Okay. So when he says a fruitless crown, the crown is not fruitless, but Macbeth is fruitless. That is, he does not have any children. Now, if you read A.C. Bradley's book, Shakespearean Tragedy, there you have a brilliant essay by L.C. Knights, where L.C. Knights talks about how many children did Lady Macbeth have. Because here is a discrepancy, as in Act 1, Scene 7, she says that I have given suck, and if I had to thrash that child's head on the wall, I would have done so. So, now look, I'll continue. He says, upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren scepter in my gripe. Barren scepter, as in scepter, is a kind of like a small stick, which was a marker of power, which was an emblem of power, which was a symbol of power. So, barren scepter, because Lady Macbeth has not produced a single child yet. Thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding, if it be so, for Banquo's issue have I filled my mind, for them the gracious Duncan have I murdered, put rancors in the vessel of my peace, only for them, and my eternal jewel, that is soul, given to the common enemy of man, that is the devil. Here Shakespeare is referring to Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, to make them kings, the seed of Banquo. So look, what happens is now Macbeth is regretting his action of murdering Duncan, because he realizes that if Banquo lives and if Fleance lives, then what happens is that I have murdered Duncan for nothing. I have just brought damnation on myself. Now you see, according to the Christian order of belief, if you commit a small sin or if you commit a big sin, you are still going to hell. Now, if that is the case, that you are going to hell, Macbeth realizes that he is going to hell. So basically, he says that now if I commit two more murders, three more murders, is that it does not matter, because in any case I'm going to hell. So what happens is that he wants to make his passage on earth a bit comfortable, and therefore he says that I have given my soul, my eternal jewel, to the common enemy of man, that is the devil. So if that has been the case, then I must make sure that I haven't murdered Duncan in vain. I haven't murdered Duncan for Banquo's children to become kings. Rather than so, come fate into the least and champion me to the utterance. So come, my destiny, and let me fulfill you with my utterance. Who's there? And the servant enters with two murderers. Now go to the door and stay there till we. Okay. So he asks the servant that go there and wait by the door. I'll call you when I need. Exit servant. Was it not yesterday we spoke together? He asks the murderers. It was, so please your highness. Well then, now have you considered of my speeches? Know that it was he in the past, in the times past, which held you so under fortune, which you thought had been our innocent self. This I made good to you in our last conference, passed in probation with you, how you were bone in hand, how crossed the instruments, who wrought with them, and all things else that might, to half a soul and to a notion crazed, say, thus did Banquo. So if you have some sense over here from my last speech, you can make out that I have not been the one who has put you under hardships, rather it was Banquo. But I have a different question here for you. Two things, two things should have struck them. That is the murderers. Number one is that a king gives commands, a king does not explain. Why does a king need to justify to some paltry soldiers like them that what Banquo has done, blah 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 blah? Why does a king need to justify? Number one. Number two is a deeper question. Why should a noble knight like Banquo be concerned even with putting hardships in the way of paltry soldiers or peasants like them? Now, basically, these are the questions which have struck me. Why doesn't it strike them? I also have the answer for that as well. Number one is that they are really half a soul and notion crazed, as Macbeth calls them. Number two, in order to keep the flow of the play, Shakespeare has applied such a pattern of brainwashing that through the rhetorics in Macbeth's speech, they have not been able to understand what his ulterior motive is. And therefore, the first murderer says, you made it known to us. Macbeth, I did so. And went further, which is now our point of second meeting. Do you find your patience so predominant in your nature that you can let this go? Are you so gospel to pray for this good man? So are you such a great Christian that you can forgive him? And for his issue, for his son, whose heavy hand hath bowed you to the grave and beggared yours forever? So Fleance almost sent you to grave and made your children beggars forever, and you want to let them roam free. And the first murderer says, we are men, my liege. This means two things. Number one, we are common men, my liege, so what can we do? Number two is that we are men, my liege, and therefore it is our masculinity which hinders us from reacting to, from remaining nonchalant to such a grave um, series of atrocities. I, in the catalogue go for men, as hounds and greyhounds, mongrels, spaniels, curs, shows, water rugs, and demi-wolves are clept all by the name of dogs. The valued file distinguishes the swift, the slow, the subtle, the housekeeper, the hunter, everyone according to the gift which bounteous nature hath in him closed, whereby he does receive particular addition from the bill that writes them all alike, and so of men. Look, this is where you see a very changed Macbeth. Macbeth compares men with dogs, as dogs are entrusted with slavery. Macbeth forecasts to turn his subordinates into dogs. That is, mere beasts under the hierarchical position of men in the great order of being. The tyrant in him surfaces and he treats his soldiers like dogs. Earlier, Lady Macbeth compared him to a cat. Now he compares them to dogs. And in both cases, the murderers were inform of purpose. And you see, he directly does this so. So, fierceness, loyalty are the traits of dogs. And Macbeth expects his mutts to provide. Now, if you have a station in the file, that is, if you belong to any of these breeds of dogs, uh, not in the worst rank of manhood, say it. So, if you are not worst of all of these, then say it. And I will put that business in your bosoms, whose execution takes your enemy off, grapples you to the heart and love of us, who were our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. So he yet puts another mask. Macbeth is perfect with his pretension. He is potent and potent in his pretension. And the second murderer says, I am one, my liege, whom the wild blows and buffets of the world hath so incensed that I am reckless what I do to spite the world. So he says, I don't care, I can do anything, whatever you ask of me. And I and others, so weary with disaster, stuck with fortune, that I would set my life to on any chance to mend it or be rid on it. Both of you know Banquo was your enemy. Look how he is instigating the people to murder Banquo. True, my lord, so is he mine, and in such bloody distance that every minute of his being thrusts against my nearest of life. And true, and though I could with barefaced power sweep him from my sight, and bid my will avouch it, yet I must not, for certain friends that are both his and mine, whose loves I may not drop, but wail his fall, who I myself struck down. And thence it is that I to your assistance do make love, masking the business from the common eye for sundry weighty reasons. So he says that he and I have common friends. So if I utilize my power to get him out of the way, which I can very easily do, maybe I'll anger them, and which I do not want to do, and there are sundry other reasons. So what are the sundry reasons? If he gave only one reason, that it was necessary for the welfare of the country, he would have survived from the hatred of the audience. You know, Julius Caesar, when Brutus murdered him, Brutus had a reason, that Brutus thought that Caesar was becoming a tyrant. He was becoming a monomaniac. And therefore, you cannot absolutely hate Brutus. You cannot. Though you realize that he was misdirected, but you cannot absolutely hate Brutus. But Macbeth, if he only said that, okay, this guy's existence is dangerous for the state, if he could have shown this one reason, and if he could have sustained it, then only, then and then only, the audience, I believe, would not have hated him as much as they do in the second part of the play. And the second murderer says, "We shall, my lord, perform what you command us, though our lives," and he's saying that though our lives be at stake. And Macbeth says, "Your spirits shine through you within this hour at most. I will advise you where to plant yourself, yourselves, acquaint you with the perfect spy of the time, the moment on it, for it must be done tonight, and something from the palace. Something means at some distance. Always thought that I require a clearness, and with him to leave no rubs nor blotches in the work. Cleance his son that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. Resolve yourselves apart, I'll come to you anon." So look, he says, "I will advise you where to plant yourselves." So where you must hide to do that task. Look, Duncan planted Banquo, and Macbeth will finish him from the roots, though he will fail partially, and the root will survive. Now, he says, "Acquaint you with the perfect spy of the time." This expression has caused a lot of debate and a lot of dilemma. Why? Because this expression means three things. Number one, the best moment when you will watch or spy on Banquo. Because Macbeth already knows when Banquo is going, when Banquo will come back. Number two, spy may mean knowledge, that is, knowledge of the exact time. Number three, acquaint you with the result of my watch on Banco. That is, I have kept an eye on Banco, and I will just acquaint you with the result of my watch on Banco. So these are the three notions that have been there in this one single line. And look, he says the moment on it, that is the precise moment when they will have to kill Banco. And then he says that Fleance's absence is also material to me. Now, as a poor replacement for murder, he says Fleance's absence. So Macbeth is slowly turning into the Hellhound, but he has not turned into it yet. And he says, "is no less material to me." So he has become materialistic. He wants to materialize his dream of staying the king so that Banquo's heirs do not become it. And the murderers say, "We are resolved, my lord. I'll call upon you straight, abide within." But before this, look, he says, "Resolve yourself apart. I'll come to you anon." And you will see that when they are going to murder Banquo, there is a third murderer. "I'll come to you anon." Exeunt murderers. It is concluded, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it out tonight. The tone is of sheer levity, as Macbeth has tasted blood, and the hellhound surfaces from within him. Now we go to Act 3, Scene 2. It is located in the castle and in another room. Enter Lady Macbeth and the servant. "Is Banquo gone from court?" "Ay, madam, but returns again tonight." "Say to the king I would attend his leisure for a few words." "Madam, I will." And Lady Macbeth says, "Not sad, all spent. Where our desire is got without content, 'tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." It's not sad, that is, nothing is eventually what we arrive at. Not means nothing. Not sad, all spent. So nothing is eventually what we arrive at, and their relationship is exhausted. She says all spent, their relationship is actually exhausted, where our desire is got without content. So they have become the king and the queen, but there is a clear cut rift between them. It is safer to be that which we destroy than by destroying dwell in doubtful joy. She dwells in the duality of life and death. She realizes that Duncan has ended and nothing can destroy, disturb Duncan anymore. But being alive, they are pricked by their conscience. They're pricked by, they are rather devastated by the shards of conscience. And now Lady Macbeth says that, then by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. So she dwells in the duality of the small prize and the high price. She realizes that a great price has been paid to get a very small prize, a very meager prize. Enter Macbeth. How now, my lord, why do you keep alone? Excuse me. And look, Shakespeare is already suggesting that the separation between them has begun, and it has become very prominent now. Of sorriest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them, this thing they think on. So she thinks that Macbeth is still pondering the murder of Duncan, and the horrificness or the weight of Duncan's murder still hangs over him. But she fails to realize that Macbeth has changed. This is the murderous baby that she has given birth to, rather than her old, meager, weak husband. So she says that thoughts on Duncan should have died with Duncan, but why do you keep on thinking about them? Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done. Ironically, she would not be able to follow her own speech, because in Act 5 we'll see that she will be sleepwalking. We have scorched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whilst her poor malice remains in danger of her former tooth. But let the frame of things disjoined, both the worlds suffer, ere we'll eat our meal in fear and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. So look, the murder of Duncan has been like injuring a snake, because Malcolm and Donalbain still live. Macduff doubts Macbeth. Banquo and Fleance live. So many loose ends. Macbeth needs to get rid of all of them without raising any further suspicion, to trammel up the consequence of his first act of treason. It is sure to retaliate, and Banquo and Fleance a sure act against him sooner or later. Macbeth realizes this. He wishes that both the heaven and earth, therefore, would perish by causing a rupture in the fabric of the universal frame. He realizes that let all the frame of things disjoin, and let both heaven and earth suffer. Let both the thesis and the antithesis suffer, because he has to eat each meal in fear, and he wants to end this by putting an end to Banquo. And before the banquet scene, he will put an end to Banquo. And look, he already said, Macbeth shall sleep no more. And he says that, and sleep in affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. Sleep shall neither day nor night. Remember, as the witches had already said, better be with the dead whom we to gain our peace have sent to peace, than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. And this is for the first time that we hear Macbeth's death wish. Duncan is in his grave, After life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Treason has done his worst, nor steel nor poison living, nothing can touch him further. So nothing can disturb Duncan anymore, nothing can perturb Duncan anymore. But all of these things, steel, poison, malice, domestic, foreign living, treachery, treason, all of this can still affect us. So Macbeth has a restless mind right now. Lady Macbeth says, "Come on, gentle my lord, sleek over your rugged looks, be bright and jovial among your guests tonight. So shall I love, and so I pray be you. Let our remembrance apply to Banquo, present his eminence, bold with eye and tongue, unsave the while that we must lave our honours in these flattering streams, and make our faces wizards to our hearts, disguising what they are." Excuse me. Now look, this exchange is just like Act 1, Scene 7, only that now the roles are reversed. And look, he says, let your remembrance apply to Banquo, present in eminence, both with eye and tongue. Up till now, they had discussed everything, but he does not take her to confidence about Banquo's murder. The separation has become so apparent, and Macbeth has transformed so much that as Lady Macbeth asked him in Act 1, Scene 7, that to be like the time, look like the time, Macbeth has started looking like the time. And he says, and make our faces wizards to what to our hearts, disguising what they are. And look, in Act 1, Scene 7, there was a dialogue: false face must hide what the false heart doth know. He's echoing all of this. You must leave this, Lady Macbeth says. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Thou knowest that Banquo and his fiancé lives. So you see, Macbeth misinterprets his trick of conscience as troubles of Banquo and Fleance. But Lady Macbeth says, but in them nature's copy is not eternal. That is, they do not have a perpetual lease of life from nature, so they can die. So she says, why don't you kill them? There's comfort yet, they are assailable. That is, they are disposable. Then be thou jocund. Ere the bat hath flown his cloister flight, ere to black Hecate summons the shard-born beetle with his drowsy hums, hath rung night's yawning peal, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note. So Macbeth misinterprets his wife once again, but this time deliberately, and speaks a very gloomy poetry. That is, as if it is a prologue to Banquo's death, and quite like Lady Macbeth had invoked darkness once in Act 1, Scene 5. Here Macbeth is invoking darkness. And Lady Macbeth says, what's to be done? Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. And Grierson very beautifully says, a dreadful endearment. Dearest Chuck means dearest kid, dearest love. And Grierson says this is a dreadful endearment. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. Come, sealing night, scarf of the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale. Light thickens and the crow makes wing to rooky wood. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, while night's black agents to their praise do rouse. Thou marvelest at my words, but hold this still. Things bad begun to make strong themselves by ill, So prithee, go with me. So this is Macbeth's invocation to night. He says, "Come, sealing night." Sealing means night which sows up. So it's a sieving imagery. Scarf of the tender eye of pitiful day. So like a scarf hides our throat. Similarly, scarf of the eyes of pitiful day. And with thy bloody and invisible hand, cancel and tear to pieces that great bond, that is the bond of fellowship, the bond between Macbeth and Banquo, plus also the bond of marriage between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. The King Macbeth has murdered the husband Macbeth. And look, he says, good things of day begin to droop and rouse, while night's black agents to their praise to rouse. Things bad begun make strong themselves by you. So this is the keynote of the scene and of Macbeth's mind. This is a presage to Macbeth's own thoughts. Scene 3, a park with a road leading to the palace. Enter three murderers. But who did bid thee join with us? Third murderer, Macbeth. So here we have a third murderer. Now some say that Shakespeare forgot that he had two murderers, but I personally believe, along with many other critics, that this third murderer is Macbeth himself. Or much later, we come across a servant of Macbeth who is very trusted by him, whose name is Satan, Seyton. This might be Satan as well. He needs not our mistrust, since he delivers our offices and what we have to do to the direction just. So Macbeth does not need to doubt us. Now, if you think that how can this be Macbeth, the murderers would know, but they are hiding in darkness, so they cannot see the face of the murderer. Then stand with us. The west it glimmers with some streaks of day. Now spars the late traveller apace to gain the timely inn, and near approaches the subject of our watch. So Banquo comes and the day is ending. Hark, I hear horses. Give us a light here, light there, ho. So Banquo says that there's too much darkness, give us a light. To some servant perhaps. Then it is he, the rest that are within the note of expectations already are in the court. So all the other guests are in the court and it is Banquo who is left. His horses go about almost a mile, but he does usually, so all men do, from hence to the palace gate make it their walk. So everybody steps down from their horses here and then they walk to the palace from here on out. Enter Banquo and Fleance with a torch. Alight, alight, 'tis he, stand to it. And Banquo says, Banquo is unaware of the existence of the murderers and therefore he is talking to Fleance. It will be rain tonight. And the first murderer comes with a weapon and he says, let it come down, as if as an irony. So Banquo says it is going to be rain tonight and he says, then let it rain wounds on you tonight. The first hands fly, fly, fly. Thou mayst revenge, O slave, and he dies. Fleance escapes. Who did strike out the lights? Was it not the way? So look, the murderers are not accustomed to murdering, and therefore they do not know how to go about it. And therefore he says, was it not the way? There's but one down, the sun is fled. That will be ere the set of sun. At once in one. We have lost best half of our affair. Well, let's away and say how much is done. So now they will go to talk to Macbeth. Here we end this discussion because the banquet scene is a very important one and it is a very long scene and it deserves some very close attention, and it will be too much if I cover it in one lecture. But don't worry, we are well on our way in our discussion of Macbeth, and maybe in the next three lectures, Macbeth will be over. Thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you next time in some other lecture.